This is a gift from my aunt. I am not selling merch. Hello everybody, ASLB here, and finally Season 1 of my Miraculous Marathon comes to an end. And it's been quite a wild ride. Ever since I began reviewing Miraculous episodes back in February of 2016... Jesus, has it already been 2 years? I got to collaborate with some really awesome people. I met plenty of voice actors on social media and at conventions. I talked to the English voice director of Miraculous himself while filming my Lady Wi-Fi review, reviewed an episode specifically for him and got his approval, and I even reached over 600 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for that. On the other hand, a lot of crap has happened as well. I've had my Stormy Weather review taken down twice. A villain from Arkham Asylum invaded my studio. My head was almost cut off by a flying chainsaw. I had the Miraculous stolen from me by a Microsoft Paint robot. Son of a... The mayor's daughter invaded my review of anime and forced me to review Antibug. And the Vanisher. I nearly lost to a few figures that came to life to fulfill the real Miraculous duo's goals. And I threw any bit of professionalism and credibility I had left out the window in a rant that might put me on a watch list or two. So far it hasn't exactly happened yet, so maybe I'm lucky. But out of all of the events that happened over the past 2 years, there is only one that truly matters above all that I've mentioned. I made a cameo in a Deep Pity video! No, seriously, Deep Pity vs. Anime Week in Atlanta 2018. I show up at the 2:23 mark. Okay, I'm kidding. Well, about this being the most important thing, not the event itself. The real most important thing that has happened... I gave Hawkmoth the Miraculous Eye!
Miraculous are mine!
Yes! Victory for Hawkmoth! But I still have my Miraculouses from my canon, so... yeah. So these past few years have been kind of a mixed bag for me. And the same goes for the series. So, to finish off my Miraculous Marathon, I'll be having a look at the top 5 best and worst Miraculous Ladybug episodes from Season 1 at least. Shall we start with the best? Now, before I throw out the top 5, I might as well give a few honorable mentions. And yes, I did change the camera angle. Copycat. An episode centered around my introduction to the series? How could I pass it up? Now, I will admit that the story is a bit of a mess, but it has one of my favorite lines in the entire series. It has a great villain, unoriginal design notwithstanding, and it easily has my favorite fight in the entire series. Seriously, nothing compares to this. Overall, if you're a Cat Noir fan, this is definitely something you should check out. Stormy Weather. The one episode that copyright holders will refuse to let me upload my review of. This is when the episode started getting good. It has a great villain. I still love Stormy Weather to this day. It has great action scenes, a nice sense of humor, and a nice simple story for an episode like this. It's not exactly a good place to start, but it's still worth watching regardless. Evillustrator. The Sabrina subplot might be worthless in the end, and the Mary Chat scenes don't really do much to make me want to ship the two. But it's still a fun episode. The Mary Chat scenes are a little bit cute, and most importantly, the villain is easily one of the best, mostly because he's more human than monster, at least until the very end. And even Michael Sinter-Nicholas gave a great performance as him. I mentioned in my review that I was not used to him sounding older than he looks, but now I've definitely gotten used to him, and I even told them this when I met him at Anime Week in Atlanta 2018, so yeah. The Peppeteer. Despite me calling Minona an angel from hell in my Stormy Weather review, she turned out to be one of the best villains in the series. And it's always nice to see 3 of the villains to make a comeback, even if they sound like 5-year-olds in this episode. Honestly, the only thing that I didn't like about the episode was how it tried to push the heroes always win and villains always lose philosophy, which isn't true. Villains can win as well. I mean, I managed to prove this in my Puppeteer review. And if you found that demented, good. Kung Fu. There are some cringy puns here and there, but the game of death concept works really well with this episode, and I kind of find the food theme smile-worthy. Okay, it might throw logic out the window here and there, but still, I had a lot of fun watching it. The Gamer. Honestly, I find it really hard to hate this episode. I find the villain relatable despite having a ridiculous design. I really like the video game references, especially in the end mech fight. And speaking of which, the end mech fight rivals that of the end fight in Copycat. I'm serious. If you're into gaming, this is definitely a must-watch. Anti-Bug and the Vanisher. Now, as much as I like to hate Chloe, I've got to admit that this is easily her best episode. They made damn sure I felt bad for her, and personally, I think they succeeded. Yeah, it kinda sucks that she didn't stand a chance against the Miraculous duo, but I still enjoy her as a villain regardless. And despite Vanisher not being one of the best villains in the series, I kinda like how there are 2 villains in this episode instead of 1. And finally, Horrificator. Now, this episode didn't have a lot of action, but personally, I didn't mind. As a movie critic, I enjoyed the film aspect for this episode. I liked how it lampooned certain horror tropes, the villain is adorable, and Ivan and Milen are just an adorable couple. Yeah, the way they defeat the monster is kind of embarrassing. Well, okay, I say kind of embarrassing, I meant very embarrassing. But with the exception of that, I still heavily recommend this episode to anybody who hasn't seen it. It's well worth your time. And with those out of the way, let's get to my top 5 best episodes of Miraculous Ladybug Season 1.
Another day, I'm back in school. I think about him, he's so cool. He looks at me, I look away, but does he see me anyway?
Number 5. The Christmas Special. Okay, hold it! 1, I'm well aware that this is the first episode of Season 2, but I don't really care. And 2, yes, it does feel rushed in some places. No, this won't win over people who aren't a fan of musicals. And yes, Ladybug akumatizing Santa Claus is still incredibly stupid. It is kind of disappointing in some areas, so why is it on the list? Because dang it, this episode's just heartwarming. There were plenty of elements of the story that I appreciated despite its flaws. Like how this is the first time everybody becomes concerned with Adrian's sudden disappearance, which especially makes sense given that it's Christmas time. Adrian's talk with Santa is the highlight of the episode, and it's well worth watching for that alone. And I love how Natalie cares about Adrian like the mother that he lost. And then there are the songs, which are a bit short but are wonderfully composed. The singers do a great job, and they're just enjoyable to listen to, with the minor exception going to Santa Claus's song. Even if lyrically...
Thanks, my dear, I got the same 2, you 3.
There's only 2! It is kinda weak. No, I haven't gotten over what Ladybug did to Santa Claus, and I am never going to. However, I still felt the need to put this on the list because, honestly, I really enjoyed it that much. It's a guilty pleasure of mine, and I felt like it's gotten way too much hate. Again, it isn't for everyone, but it's worth giving a chance. And while I'm talking about the Christmas special, I feel like now's a great time for me to bring up a mistake that I made in my original review. Special thanks to SparkStreaks02 for clearing this up. Now, remember when I brought up the lip syncing for this scene?
Merry Christmas to all.
I originally said this. Apparently, the animators animated the characters so that they sing Merry Christmas to you, but the cast managed to dub it so that they sang Merry Christmas to all. I was wrong. It turns out that this was a direct translation from the French script, where the last syllable was to, not all. And just so you could see what I mean... Again, to SparkStreaks02, thank you for clearing it up. I'm honestly grateful to have some fans who are willing to clear things up for me. Number 4, Valpina. Yes, the episode that centered around my favorite and everyone else's least favorite character only gets a number 4 spot. Hey, it's better than putting her in an honorable mention. Valpina is where the stakes for the heroes were raised. The villains were getting more dangerous and there were more enemies of Ladybug being made, seeing as Lila is the first victim to not accept Ladybug's apology. And while we're on that, Lila's story is kind of relatable for me. Of course I have the Momocon incident to thank for that, but I still felt sorry for what Ladybug did to her, regardless of her being an unrelenting +1 grade A
Liar!
Plus, come on! She had Ladybug almost give up her Miraculouses twice! Yeah, Simple Pigeon and Cat Noir ruined both moments, and the ending is too upsetting for its own good, but with the latter, I at least have Pharaol's with or without the mask to satiate my needs for the reveal. Also, it sets up the beginning of Season 2 wonderfully, making the fans anxious for the next season by building up the mystery behind Gabriel, and leaving us to ask who this guy really is. Though that's what the last episodes are for, but we'll get to them later. Overall, Valpina may be hated by everyone and their grandmother and their grandmother's grandmother, but she'll still be my favorite character and I'll always treasure this episode because of it. I know I have horrible standards, so just to prove that I have some credibility, here's one that most people can agree is worthy of being on the list. Number 3, Simon Says. Of course the episode I reviewed for the English voice director would appear on this list. And the funny thing is, this actually managed to be the best episode on Alius Cogitabam's tier list, even though she said Evillustrator was her personal favorite. And while I won't exactly say that this is the best episode, after all there are 2, or technically 3 more episodes after this, I can still say that this is a really strong episode. This is a pretty good change of pace for Miraculous. Yeah, the formula is still there, but it's different enough to stand out on its own. Rather than focusing on the villain a whole lot, it actually centers around Gabriel, giving us a backstory to his overprotectiveness, building up the mystery behind him, and making him look like a complete tool on TV. I feel so sorry for Keith Silverstein right now. Yes, the part with Marinette being grounded is kind of meaningless in the grand scheme of things, but at least they made an effort to try and show the consequences of Marinette's double life. And the Ladybug scene deserves a special mention because, well, it's just cute. And despite not being a central focus of the episode, Simon Says as a villain is a highlight. Ugly design aside, he is so entertaining to watch, mostly thanks to Ezra Weiss's charismatic voice acting, and it makes me sad that we don't get to see more of him once the episode is over. But regardless, I don't regret what I said in my original review. It's a great episode, go watch it, it's well worth your time. Ezra Weiss, thank you for the kind words, and thank you for being a great director of a great dub. Okay, I should probably move on before my puberty kicks in again. Number 2, the Pharaoh. I've seen plenty of people call this the low point of Season 1, including Shady Durags, and all I have to say to that is, really? This episode? With this villain? How is it that bad? Now, I will admit there are some annoying moments in this, but they don't really get in the way of the amount of fun I had here. This is where we find out that Marinette wasn't the first Ladybug, opening up a ton of possibilities for side stories centered around these past heroes. Everything else that I liked about Miraculous is solid here, but what really made this episode stand out for me is, well, the villain himself. This is easily one of the best villains that has come from this series. His design, his powers, the fact that he mops the floor with the duo in no time, the fact that he has some history with Ladybug, and even Vic Mignogna's outstanding performance. Then again, he's the same person who played Rolly, which I honestly wish I made a joke about in my original review. Of course, nowadays I can't really talk about him without bringing up the controversy surrounding him. For those who weren't aware, Vic Mignogna has been hit with many allegations of sexual misconduct amongst other things. And it's become so numerous that a ton of conventions canceled his appearance and Funimation and Rooster Teeth cut ties with him. And if any of you are wondering if I'm going to bring up my viewpoints about the matter, I'm not. I already said what I needed to on Twitter. I just want to move on from the situation and just keep doing what I want to do because, quite frankly, this situation's making my stomach distend. However, I will say this. Whether you're on the Kick Vic side or the I Stand With Vic side, please do not harass others because of differing viewpoints, whether it's the other side, executives at Funimation or Rooster Teeth, or other voice actors. It's incredibly rude, unnecessary, and it'll make you or the whole side look bad. And can't we just have some positivity here? I mean, I already said in my Valpina review that 2019 is going to suck, and yeah, 2019 sucks, so can we please not make it suck anymore? So putting the controversy aside, the Pharaol might be annoying in some areas, but I still love it to death. It stood out to me the first time watching it, and it's kept its place as one of the best and most rewatchable episodes of the season. But even though I love this episode, and basically all of the other ones I mentioned, there is still one more episode that managed to beat all of them. Well, technically two. You guys probably know what it is.
Miraculous, simply the best, up to the test when things go wrong. Miraculous,
Number 1.
always so strong. Miraculous, simply the best, up to the test when things go wrong. Miraculous, the luckiest.
You guys probably saw this one coming from a mile away. I mean, they were the subject of my last review. They were bound to be on this spot of the list. The Origins episodes have been considered by many fans to be the best episodes of Season 1, and I personally agree. They did what they had to do. Introduce Marinette and Adrian, answer enough questions to leave fans satisfied, leave enough questions unanswered to make fans want more, and just tell an entertaining story. On top of that, the writing is some of the best the series has to offer. It has one of the best subplots in the series, and it has some of the most memorable moments in Miraculous history. Do I need to mention the umbrella scene? The only problem that I have with this episode is Stoneheart, but again, as a first villain he gets the job done, and his amusing personality does help make him stand out. It's like I said in my original review. These episodes are must-watches for any Miraculous fan, though I recommend that you save these for last after you watch Valpina, because the build-up from the previous episodes will make this one leave a much bigger impact. Now, yes, I did lose my mind at the speech scene in my review of the Origins episodes, and yeah, hindsight, damage, numerous Akumas, and the worst moment of the better part of my life kind of ruined this scene for me. But that doesn't mean it's an awful scene. Oh no, it's still a great scene, and it helps develop Ladybug into a much stronger character. It's just that knowledge of Ladybug and Cat Noir, especially Ladybug, and personal experience kind of make this scene hard for me to enjoy. Me problem aside, I will still give these episodes the highest recommendation I can possibly muster. They're a perfect way to finish off the season, and they're more than worthy enough of taking the top spot as the best episodes of Miraculous Ladybug Season 1. Those were great episodes. So now let's look at the bad ones. I know, it's pretty blasphemous for me to say worse than Miraculous in the same sentence, but guys, this series isn't perfect. I mean, Hey Arnold has Arnold Betrays Iggy, Avatar The Last Airbender has The Great Divide, Fairly Odd Parents has It's a Wishful Lie, and SpongeBob has One Course Meal, A Pal for Gary, Pet Sitter Pat, One Course Meal, Rodeo Days, Atlanta Square Panics, One Course Meal, Truth or Square, One Course Meal, SpongeBob You're Fired, and did I mention One Course Meal? Miraculous was bound to have at least one dud in this series, but yeah, I managed to find 5 in this one season alone, so yeah, let's get to the list. But before I begin, I feel like it's only fair for me to give out a few dishonorable mentions. The only problem is I only have one. That being Darkblade, mostly because it's just alright. It's not really good or bad, it's just alright. Though I kind of expected better from Miraculous. So, yeah. Please ignore the sudden disappearance of all the stuff that was on this table. It'll return, trust me. However, I should stress that this is mostly my opinion, and if you like these episodes, that's perfectly fine. More power to you. In fact, I'm kind of curious. What are your favorite and least favorite episodes of Season 1? Leave a comment in the description below. I'd love to see what you have to say. So with that said, let's have a look at the top 5 worst episodes of Miraculous Ladybug Season 1. No. That song's too positive. I think I have something more fitting. Take it away, Nickelback! Number 5, Guitar Villain. Now I know what you're thinking. Didn't I say this episode was a fun kind of terrible? Yes. Yes, I did. But terrible is still terrible. Honestly, this episode is just an insane, weird as hell mess. It contradicts previous episodes in certain areas, like Tiki's advice on how Ladybug's yo-yo works. The story was ridiculous, the villain was ridiculous, his powers were ridiculous, if admittedly awesome. Some of the scenes were ridiculous, basically everything was ridiculous. I mean, how could you take an episode with a crocodile dragon and dancing pigeons of all things seriously? You just can't! But that's kind of why I like it so much. Again, if we're being technical here, yeah, you could easily make a case for this being the worst episode of Miraculous Ladybug. But it was so ridiculous that out of all the episodes on this list, this is the one I recommend the most. And to be fair, there are definitely some things that I like about it, like how it portrays the rebellious rock star, executives who want artists to sell out, and pop stars with no artistic integrity. And Jagged Stone is a relatable character, and despite me calling Lex Lang's performance odd, I still enjoyed it. Now, yes, this episode is still terrible and it does deserve a spot on this list, but if you want to have some cornball fun and laugh at scenes like this, then Guitar Villain is right up your alley. Before I move on to the next episode, there is another thing I want to clear up. No commenter has brought this to my attention, this just popped up in my mind while I was watching this episode. Now, remember back in my review when I said this? Do I even want to ask how she managed to concoct a special scent similar to sweat and leather? Well, upon rewatching that episode review, I remembered a game that I saw on VAT19 called What's That Smell, which had a card that smelled like leather. And upon further research, I found out that there were leather-scented oils, fragrances for cars, colognes, and even candles. So it is possible that Marinette used a leather-scented oil for her stickers. Still wondering where the sweat came from. Number 4, Reflecta and Princess Fragrance. Okay, I know I'm cheating a bit here by putting 2 episodes in one spot, but honestly, I couldn't decide which is worse, an episode that leaves my head or an episode that gets under my skin. Now, just to clear things up, no, I do not hate Juleka or Rose. I thought that they were likable characters and their relationship was kind of adorable given their contrasting appearances. And Aaron Fitzgerald does a great job performing as both characters. These 2 characters had the potential of starring in some really good episodes. So what happened here? While I won't say that they're some of the worst episodes I've seen in television history, Reflecta and Princess Fragrance are some of the most disappointing episodes I've seen in this entire series. And for different reasons. Reflecta is the one episode that leaves my head every time I watch it, and unlike Darkblade, there's nothing to redeem it. The villain looks like a candy shop princess doll, her powers are minimal and trivial, the plot is practically non-existent, the action sequences are flat out underwhelming for the most part. It's so boring! It does have its moments, like Adrian hating high heels, Marinette stealing Chloe's phone, and the ending photo shoot for Juleka, but aside from that, there was barely any reason for me to do a full-length review of this, much less recommend it to anybody. There may be others who enjoy this, but I end up falling asleep just talking about it. In fact, I'm falling asleep right now. Oh crap, I gotta talk about the top 5 worst episodes of Miraculous Ladybug Season 1! You're already doing that, me. Oh. Okay, then I'll just head back to— Don't you dare! Okay, I'll continue the list. Now, as for Princess Fragrance, I was expecting to put this episode in the dishonorable mention spot, mostly because of this scene.
Give me your Miraculous!
But then I began writing the script for the review, and when I was done, I concluded that this episode was 22 minutes of— Oh, hey look, it's the guy we saw in Gamer, Animan, and Antibug. And the Vanisher. That's kind of cool. The story isn't outright terrible. It has a nice change of pace, and Rose is a sympathetic sweetheart, but good God, this episode is just aggravation incarnate. And unlike other episodes, the annoyance gets in the way of any enjoyment I might have with this. Marinette's lies, the kingdom of Achu, the sing-songy servants, Erin Fitzgerald's performance as Princess Fragrance, it's just insufferable. And again, I do not mean to hurt Erin Fitzgerald's feelings. I mean, she's a great voice actress, and I don't necessarily blame her for the performance. I just blame the direction she was given. And honestly, these episodes don't really anger me, they just upset me. As I really wanted these two characters to have good episodes, and I really wanted to give Erin Fitzgerald something she can enjoy. But instead, we just have these two. Well, at least they could be on this list together. I mean, that's fair, right? Yeah, I should move on to the next episode. Number 3, Roger Cop. Now we're talking about the unholy trio of Season 1. The set of episodes that I believe should have been renamed How to Drain My Sanity in 22 Minutes or Less, numbers 1, 2, and 3. And boy are we starting off with a doozy of an episode. Now, Roger Cop, despite not being very special, is a sympathetic villain, and the animation is some of the best I've seen, with the action sequences in particular being highlights. Though that's where the positives end, people. The setup for the main plot just doesn't feel right. Who thought it was a good idea to have Plague think that Chloe's bracelet is a piece of camembert, and then get stuck on his head, causing the entire fiasco to happen? But as I said in my original review, the main problem that I have with Roger Cop is the way it tries to deliver its moral. I get what they were trying to say. Don't be so quick to point fingers.
Every citizen is innocent until proven guilty.
But it seems like everyone is quick to point fingers at Marinette and Roger for trying to stick to that moral. Marinette gets accused of accusing her classmates when she's trying to prove a point to Chloe, and Roger gets accused of arresting people without any evidence, when basically he's officer, judge, jury, and witness of all the crimes, so he had every right to arrest them. Yes, that includes the duo themselves. When you're facing a villain who is a cop, never tell him,
"You can add bodily harm to the charges."
You'll look like an idiot when you then say,
"You can't accuse someone without proof."
And I know that this doesn't have to do with the moral, but hearing Ladybug say,
We're still saving Paris.
when all she's been doing is justifying Roger Cop making her and Cat Noir outlaws, it just makes me cringe. And I forgot to mention this in my original review, but Andre Bourgeois is obnoxious in this episode. I get that he's supposed to show why Chloe is the way she is, but dear God, if this is the kind of leader Ladybug and Cat Noir want to keep in office, then I'm perfectly fine with having Judge Dredd over here as the leader. Another thing I forgot to mention in my original review was that despite being so quick to point fingers, nobody calls Andre or Chloe out for their actions. I mean, yeah, Roger Cop punishes them, but nobody else in the classroom, with a minor exception to Tom, tells them that they're being so quick to point fingers. Everybody in the classroom was willing to give Marinette flack for accusing everybody of stealing Chloe's bracelet when she was only trying to tell Chloe that she is just as guilty as everybody else in the classroom. But when Chloe actively points fingers at her, Chloe doesn't get called out by anybody. And despite the mayor outright abusing his power to fire Roger right in front of Marinette, she still feels the need to call out Roger for accusing everyone of every little wrongdoing when he wasn't, instead of calling out the mayor for abusing his power. I got nothing.
Damn it!
What else is there for me to say other than Roger Cop? Part man, part machine, all flop. And one last thing I'd like to bring up. Remember this scene and how I said it was my happy place? Yeah, well, I ended up losing that happy place by the end of the episode review. However, thanks to Samuel Green, he ended up showing me how satisfying this was. There's something about seeing Ladybug being punched in the face that I didn't even realize was satisfying. Again, thank you Samuel Green for finding a new happy place for me. I really appreciate it. Number 2, Lady Wi-Fi. You guys probably expected this episode to be on here, judging by how... Why am I never doing this?! In pain I was in my original review, and again, if you like this episode, that's completely fine. But I just can't stand this episode. Now, it does have its positives. The villain is great, the action scenes are awesome, and the concept for this episode, a blogger obsessed with figuring out Ladybug's identity turning evil, is something I'm down with. So what's the problem? It's a giant tease! Dear God, this episode might as well be renamed Screw You the Episode. There are so many moments where the show tricks you into thinking that something interesting might happen, like the reveal or Hawkmoth's victory, but right when it's about to happen, the creators just decide to take that moment, throw it under the rug, and then beat it to death with sticks, saying, nope, it's never gonna happen, we're still 7 episodes in. And if you're watching this outside of the US, or at least on Disney Channel, you're 4 episodes in! 4! And on top of that, this episode is a basic reminder that every single civilian in Paris is stupid and doesn't know who Ladybug and Cat Noir are behind the mask, despite how obvious it is! And just to make things worse, they decide to have these people believe that anybody can be Ladybug. Even Chloe! And while they're at it, if you have any single bit of common sense and try to convince people that Marinette and Adrian are the heroes of Paris, you'll be seen as insane because there is no possible way that these two could be the heroes of Paris. Oh my God, I died inside from saying that. There's no end to this stupidity. Later on, Cat Noir sees Chloe in a Ladybug suit and believes she is Ladybug, even though he's smart enough to recognize the feature these two clearly don't share in Dark Cupid. And even after it's revealed that Chloe isn't Ladybug, an Antibug, and the Banisher, they still believe Chloe is Ladybug, at least until Sabrina blows her cover! This episode was so bad that I invaded Alius Cogitabam's Rapid Review just to rant about how awful it is. Even the YouTuber Shady Durags hated this episode just as much as I did, for the exact same reasons. And all of this is putting aside the moments that made me want to scream into my beanbag in agony. From the freezer scene to Hawkmoth not telling Lady Wi-Fi to simply take the Miraculouses while Ladybug is still vulnerable, to Cat Noir closing the door. And do I have to talk about this godforsaken scene?
Why doesn't it come off? Because it's magic?
Seriously, if you know anything about me, you probably know about this scene. This scene was so infuriating for me the first time I watched it that it ultimately solidified my determination to reveal Ladybug and Cat Noir's identities. It might as well be the reason why the Momocon incident was a thing, and the reason why Huntsman was a thing. It ended up becoming a running gag on my channel just because of how cheap of an excuse it was. I mean, who would give this scene a free pass?
Some notable moments of the episode was the reveal that the Ladybug's mask can't be removed because magic, which I think really subverts many a superhero story where the hero is in a compromising position and about to have their mask taken off.
Why doesn't it come off? Because it's magic?
Oh, wow. That's actually pretty neat.
It is a very good episode with one of my favorite lines.
Because it's magic?
That line's just the explanation for everything. It's perfect.
Okay, I'm not gonna judge. Again, no hard feelings to those who really like this episode, and if you don't care about Ladybug and Cat Noir's identities getting revealed or not, then I might recommend this episode. But if you don't want to experience 22 minutes of the phrase I hate myself, then it's best if you stay away from this one. Now I'm sure you guys are wondering why I didn't put this episode at number 1. Well, yes, it's the most painful episode to sit through, yes, it's the biggest tease in the entire series, and yes, the...
because it's magic?
Scene is still bullcrap, but at least it wasn't... Number 1. Now I'm sure all of you saw this coming, considering in my original review I outright stated it was my least favorite episode of Season 1. But for those who unsubscribed after my Lady Wi-Fi review, here it is, the one episode that managed to be even worse than that 22-minute migraine. Where do I begin? Now, I will admit that in terms of the identity crap, this episode isn't as bad as Lady Wi-Fi, but whereas Lady Wi-Fi was an unrelenting, inconsistent tease, Pixelator is a misguided, problematic, unsatisfying mess. The villain is a stalker who's impossible to sympathize with, especially when it's revealed that he went to Jagged Stone's mother's bingo game. His design is ridiculous and his powers are minimal and lacking. I get that they were trying to make him like a Terminator, and he is intimidating until the parts where Hawkmoth threatens to take his Akuma, and when he releases half of the prisoners. The action scenes are alright, but feel anticlimactic after Ladybug's bugged off when the fight literally cost her an arm and a leg. Cat Noir gets treated poorly throughout the episode and barely serves a purpose here, and the ending is a huge anticlimax that leaves me wanting more from the Rockstar himself. And most importantly, the episode's just boring. Now, I don't really have a problem with an average or competent episode that's boring, but when it's as problematic as this and doesn't leave a lasting impact, that's when it becomes even worse. Again, I'll bash Lady Wi-Fi into the ground until the cows come home from a recent alien probing, assuming they aren't chopped up and cooked in the steak or decimated in some way. But I have to admit that it does have its decent elements like the villain and action sequences, and it's at least interesting. It's stupid and it's painful, but still interesting. I can definitely see the appeal of this episode, and I can see why some people might like it or even consider it their favorite. But for me, Pixelator is just a waste of time with very little redeeming it. Again, it has its moments, but even those don't save it from taking the top or bottom spot as the worst episode of Miraculous Ladybug Season 1. But please keep in mind, just because I find these episodes below the standards of a typical Miraculous episode, it doesn't really worsen the series in my eyes. As I said in my Origins review, this series annoys me to no end, but it has a certain charm to it that prevents me from wanting to stay away from this series or hating it and everything it stands for, even with episodes like the Unholy Trio of Season 1. I love Miraculous Ladybug, and without it, I wouldn't have done this review series. I wouldn't have met so many people, including the voice actors and actresses from the TV show, and I wouldn't have built up quite an audience doing the 3 things that I love doing the most: making videos, writing reviews, and entertaining people. What was that? Just as I thought. Sure, my opinions of the heroes are out there, but I try to push those aside when talking about Miraculous as a series. And yeah, some of these episodes took a toll on me, but that's kind of what makes these episode reviews special. The hard work that goes into making most of these episode reviews, and watching people react to them and share their opinions with me, really make this entire review series worth it. So, to all the people who stuck around and to all the people who worked on this show, thank you guys so much for being awesome. You really helped me find some purpose in life, and I couldn't have done it without you guys. Now then, with all this said, there's still one last thing I have to do. You know, I've been wearing this hoodie ever since the beginning of high school, and I've always worn this to keep me calm during stressful situations. And when it came time to do this review series, I thought, hey, why not make this part of my costume? But it's beginning to show signs of wear, especially right here and in both of these cuffs. And I feel like after 6 years of being worn, I feel like I need a change. Well, Lucky Hoodie, you've done your part. But I think now's the time for us to part ways. So, this is goodbye. So now that that's done and over with, I guess the only fair question to ask is, what now? Austin, Ladybug and Cat Noir have put you on a watch list in Paris for slander and support of Hawkmoth amongst other things. Oh. So that's how they want to play this game, isn't it? Alright then. I can play too! I've been waiting to wear this one. Here's to season 2.
Yeah.